Hi, welcome to Clubs and Culture for 10/22/2018. We're up to Marty, which is the 1955 Best Picture winner. It's quite an unusual Best Picture on several ways. It was actually initially a TV movie. Um, Made like a couple years before, and they just Patty Chayefsky, I think that's how you say it, wrote the TV drama, and then it was successful. So Burt Lancaster and a couple other Hollywood actors approached him to make a feature length film. So he took his script and basically just expanded it a little bit. And so there's that. It's really the first independent production film to win, because it wasn't really made by a studio. It was made just by a small company with that. The other thing that makes it quite unusual, it's really a art house or slice of life film. It tells the story. The story is basically 24 hours long. But it tells the story of a butcher in the Bronx, played brilliantly by August Borgnine, and he's loved long, and he's been luckless in love because of his looks, and more importantly, how he feels about his looks. Meeting a shy girl who's also been sort of unlucky in love because of being shy and mousy, and she's not conventionally attractive, but again, she kind of feels more about how she feels unconventionally attractive. So there's that, and it's a really good film. If I was making a list of the most unusual Best Picture winners, this would probably be the second one after Midnight Cowboy. It's only an hour and a half, so it's very short. It's in some ways very, very slight, but in other ways it's a very, very affecting film. So let me bring up some clips and everything, so I'm not just rambling. See you in a sec. Okay, so one of the things that is interesting about sort of the social impact of this movie is that was Burt Lancaster. He's not in the film at all, and he wasn't really involved in the film. He put up some money and he acted as a producer and made some creative decisions. Like, he kind of pushed for Ernest Borgnine to be cast in it, but he's sort of the main marketing guy used in the film, because it was such a small budget film, and it was such an art house film. The other thing that's kind of interesting on that front is this film spent more money on its Oscar campaign, $400,000, than it did on making it, which it was $343,000, which is kind of amazing. Any case, I really like this film. I think it's one of the few love stories I have ever seen, where the love long, where romantic love isn't just treated as the be all end all of human existence, and it's not treated as a panacea, and it's not treated as unattainable for anyone. And so I really like that this movie very bluntly and honestly deals with people who are unlucky in love, either because of their looks or because of, more importantly, how they feel about their looks. Because that sort of Marty's main conflict is he thinks he's this unlovable guy because of him being, Ernest Borgnine and not being conventionally attractive. And then Clara sort of feels very similar, and everything like that. And so there's the first scene I want to show you is this sort of a dance sequence, and you need to pay attention to the dialogue. So to set this up, Marty and Clara are at a dance, and he went there just with a male friend, and she went there on a double date, and the double date, the guy's not interested in her. And so the guy who was on the date with Clara, came up to Marty and basically tried to pawn her off on him, and he thought that was awful, so he went and sees it, and she breaks down, sort of crying and exiting, and he kind of creepily follows her and says, "Do you want to dance?" And then she sort of turns around and hugs him. And so one of the things I like about this is the scene I'm talking about. One of the things I like about this movie is Marty is a very kind man, but he also acts incredibly socially awkward. And it strikes me as very, very realistic. And I like how they connect on, not so much like, I don't want to say bad, like they connect on something very, very personal initially, that they both sort of cry a lot at stuff, which is very interesting, because for a man in the 50s to be announcing that he cries a lot is very unusual. And then it's specifically this line here about him talking about "You're not such a dog." Like, that's like he's trying to be nice, and I guess in a way it is, because he ends up calling himself a dog, so he's just sort of being blunt about that he's not conventionally attractive and she's not conventionally attractive, but at the same time he's saying you're not as much as a dog as you think you are. And so I really like, and then he says that about himself as well, so I really like that it's sort of the both notions that it's not that how they feel about their looks has probably been a greater detriment to their love, being lucky in love, than their actual looks themselves. And there's something very, very touching about him, about this dialogue and this scene of him being very, very awkward and sort of giving her a backhanded compliment, but accidentally, and then her being a teacher, and Blair plays this very well, where she's sort of realizes that he's being very open, and so she's going to be open about her age right here, and it's very, very touching in that way, that it's sort of awkward and painful to watch, but at the same time it's very tender and very, very human. Okay, so this scene right here is they've had a wonderful time going out on a date, and he's going to ask for a kiss here, and she's going to resist. And the thing is, it is a little bit him being entitled, and it is him being a little bit male possessive and everything like that. But the thing is, he doesn't actually kiss her, and he backs off eventually, relatively fast. I mean, it is in the sort of the 1950s, so that he, doesn't pounce and get rapey is really good, while also in dealing with the male entitlement. Like, the movie hits a nice soft spot between like him having the male entitlement too much and not fully handling the situation, but also not being a full out, like, he's awkward and human while not being like Marty himself is awash in sort of rape culture there, but Marty recognizes the humanity, and he said in this line about "I know how the world works, I should have known better," makes it awkward and painful to watch, but at the same time very, very human and very, very touching. And it's utterly believable that, despite him being a little bit too aggressive there, that she would come over and say this to him. And one of the things I really like about Blair's performance is there's no hidden agenda to this, and she's being completely forthright in the entire time. And I really like this refrain, that I really want to see you again, and that she herself didn't know how to handle him trying to kiss her because of gender expectations, and so she was just the social awkwardness of the situation. And I really like that she keeps telling him, I want to see you again. And it makes it feel very much like very, very tender and love, a good way of handling the material. Now, the last two things I want to talk about is sort of the way in which Marty and Clara's relationship are juxtaposed against two other things. There's Angie, who's the guy on the right, who's all Marty's 34, Angie's 33, and he also isn't necessarily conventionally attractive, but he's very he's not a kind man, and he comes across something of, excuse this terminology, but it comes across something like a pickup artist, as he keeps wanting to go down to 72nd Street in the refrain of the movie, and that's where you could pick up women, which comes across very, very creepy. And so so Marty ends up sort of getting a chance at love life by by meeting Clara and being open and honest, where he seems to be stuck and being manipulative and much more entitled, and being in some ways, his personality sort of busted, which is an interesting contrast. And so it was one of the things I like about that is because Angie also has been unlucky in love, where I think for him it's much more about his personality as opposed to his looks, where really makes sort of the point that for people, personality is far more important, because this movie is sort of arguing that love is much more about a personality capability. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is there's this subplot that ends up working a lot, and it ends up almost having Marty be tempted to not call Claire. Is this relationship with Virginia and Tommy, where he basically is living with his mother, and they need to move her out of the house because she's causing conflict, and so they've been having fights about this continuously. And so the point of this stuff is they are partnered, they have a family, but they're still sort of unhappy and unlucky in love. So it's making the point that love isn't a cure-all, that romantic relationships, even though love is something that can be attained by everyone, but because it's attainable does not mean it's going to cure everything. And it's a really realistic, tender way of looking at love, and I really, really like this movie. And it's such a good movie because of the script. The script is the best part, and then the acting is very, very good, especially of Betsy Blair and Ernest Borgnine. And then the direction is sort of stripped down minimalism to let the ordinariness come through. Anyway, so that's going to be it for Cubs and Culture. See you guys tomorrow.